Good morning. Welcome everybody to our first regular meeting of the new academic year. It's a treat to be here with everybody, and I'll update on the items noted on the agenda, and as usual, a couple of other things. First, the regular report on the SCR 201 task force, really looking at faculty classifications. Thanks to Vice President Halbert, who is our lead on this, working with UPA very closely. The current priorities are finishing off a revised classification document for our four-year university faculty, and it identifies the workload breakdown by classification type, divides faculty into tenure eligible and non-tenure eligible, eliminates the IR, S, J, and M in the tenure category, and replaces it with a single F category for academic faculty, which is pretty standard throughout higher education. And right now we're doing a lot of work on the non-tenure category, which is the new area, including the existing adjunct/lecturer classifications, and also the new professor of practice or industry. The non-tenure classification is where the hardest work is, and we're also trying to make sure we don't do harm to the current what are called I2s and R2s who currently do not receive tenure as well under the current classification. Just to put it on your radar, some faculty at JABSOM have raised concerns about the elimination of the M classification, which is for medical school faculty only. Again, most universities don't have a separate classification, and this would be prospective only. So Vice President Halbert will meet with them and try to understand the concerns and work through those. The plan is that once the academic year begins, we will submit the revised documents to the faculty senates for their consultation. They have already seen where we're headed pretty carefully, and our goal is still to have all of this work done by the end of the calendar year. So executive managerial salary adjustments, I'll share a little more detail, and if there are questions, Vice President Gouveia is also here. We have over 6,500 full-time salaried employees at the University of Hawaiʻi. Nearly all of them are part of one of 8 bargaining units. That's how the state organizes collective bargaining. So we happen to be in 8 of them. Our 2 largest employee groups are our faculty, who are represented by UPA, and our administrative, professional, and technical staff. We usually refer to them as APTs, and you meet them through the staff council. They are represented by HGA, and then our blue-collar workers are represented by UPW. I think we might have a nurse or 2 who's represented separately as well. So each of those unions negotiate separately with the state, and we have a certain number of votes, but we are pivotal only with UPA, which is our faculty, because that's the only group for which we are the only employer. Outside of that, we have about 200 salaried personnel who are exempt executive managerial employees. Those are the ones we refer to as EM. And these are employees who are at will and not covered by any union contract. So that's what I will update you on today. The negotiated collective bargaining agreements for all of our unionized employees, those have been agreed to by the state, and the legislature typically passes a bill for each bargaining unit appropriating the money to pay the negotiated increases. And it typically happens toward the very end of the session. So for this year, UPA, our faculty, are scheduled, well, they did receive actually a 5% pay increase on July 1, and they will receive another one next year on July 1. Those collective bargaining bills that are passed by the legislature include not only funding for the unionized employees, but also for the employees who are excluded from each bargaining unit. And pretty much every state agency also has excluded employees. And so all of the collective bargaining bills contain that language saying this is for both the included and excluded employees. So as part of the appropriation for UPA, a comparable amount of funding, in this case, it would have been 5%, was provided for salaries for our excluded employees, that is our EM or executive managerial practices. So typically for the unions, these collective bargaining increases are strictly formulaic. So 5% for all employees, for example, for this year for UPA. Over the years, UH has used different methodologies for how we process our EM increases. So prior to the pandemic, well, historically, they were flat percentages. Beginning sometime around the early 2000s, and particularly on President McLean's watch, we began to make those increases dependent on the performance reviews that were performed. We can do this for EMs because they're not covered by any union contract. So in various years, we've used one-time bonuses for people for performance or exemplary outcomes, or sometimes differential rate increases for people with different performance ratings. Whenever we do this, we always tailor the increases to fit the total dollar amount appropriated. So if somebody, say there's 5% appropriated, if somebody gets 6%, somebody else has to get less to fund that differential. So that's been our historic practice over these past years. Regents policy that covers this is RP 9.212, and it delegates to the president the authority to approve annual increases of up to 5% for all EM employees, except the 3 employees who report directly to the board. So that's the board secretary, the president, and the auditor. Those 3 positions report directly to the board. So no change. The board approves it. So what I'm describing now is the process for the other little 200-ish employees who are not those 3. And this year, I'm proposing that the same flat rate, 5% percentage, be applied to all EM employees who have not received an unsatisfactory rating, meaning they have met their performance objectives for the prior year. This would be effective July 1 for all EMs who are in their position as of June 30. And it matches the legislative appropriation for the salary increases for these employees. And it is consistent with the salary increases for our faculty, which is the bargaining unit from which our EM employees are excluded. So let me just add a little about why this approach this year. We had extensive discussion among the officers, so that's the vice presidents and the chancellors of the 4-year campuses, because this applies to all the EM employees across the entire university system. What we noticed, and this has been raised to us by our executive employees, and I should say EM is not code for makes a lot of money. We have APT staff who make more than some EM employees. We have many faculty who make more than some EM employees, although in general, many of the highest paid employees are EM employees. But during years of budget challenges, the EM employees have been the only place we could save salary money without going back to unions and bargaining. So there have been multiple times in the past 15 or so years when EMs had either no raise at all or raises that were lower than their unionized colleagues. There have also been times in budget shortfalls when employees have taken pay reductions, and unlike unionized employees, there were pay reductions for unionized employees around 2009-ish. They subsequently got all of that money back. That did not happen for the EM employees who received pay reductions. They had salaries restored, but they were not made whole. So as a result, over time, our EM employees have lagged in their increases pretty significantly. It looks like as much as a half of the levels of increases to our unionized employees, particularly our faculty and staff. So what really was brought to our attention is, we need to be provided the opportunity to at least continue to stay level, and especially in a year in which inflation was so significant, upwards and over 8%, fortunately slowing. So I won't say this will be our practice moving forward, but the officers came to really a unanimous position that this would be the best thing to do for our 200 executive managerial employees. So this does not require board approval. The board can decide how it wants to act on the 3 EM employees who report to the board. It does require a public posting. So our intent will be to post that with the regular August agenda, where we will have the list of all of the EM employees, the new EM employee salaries. Moving on, and there's time for questions after this. Let me highlight just a couple other things. So as of yesterday, I look at enrollment at least a few times a week. As of yesterday, we were 33 days out from the first day of instruction. And again, for those of you who are new, the way we look at this data is we compare not, where were we on July 19th, but where were we 33 days before the first day of instruction, because first day varies from year to year. So the good news, and I think this is the first time I've been able to say this for some time, the overall head count for the entire university system for fall 23 is about 1.3% ahead of where we were in fall 22. So we've had campuses that have gone up and down. This is the first time the gross system headcount number. This will surprise you perhaps. The community colleges are leading the way. And for the last years, they have experienced the greatest decreases consistent with what has happened nationally. Right now, the community colleges have about a 3% increase in headcount, followed by increases at UH West Oahu and UH Mānoa as well. The numbers within the 7 community colleges are completely variable, but quite large percentage headcount increases at Honolulu and Windward community colleges. We also look at the student semester hour data. So in headcount, one student taking one class, such as an early college student at a high school, looks exactly the same as a full-time student at a university taking 15 or 18 credits. So we also like to look at the SSH student semester hours. That represents 1 3-credit course represents 3 student semester hours, 1 student in 1 3-credit course. So that gives a view of how much we are teaching. So it's one is how many people are we serving, one is how much are we teaching. That is also up. It's up a little bit more than headcount. It's at 1.5% as a system. In this one of the major units, Manoa has the greatest increase. It's about up, again, 33 days beforehand. It's up about 2.5% more student semester hours. So just to put that in context, that represents about 4,800 student semester hours. That's about 1,600 individual course enrollments in a typical 3-credit courses. The community colleges also have a 2.3% increase in student semester hours, still led by Honolulu and Windward community colleges, and also a slight uptick at Leeward, more student semester hours, but fewer headcount at Leeward, meaning students are taking more courses, which is good for them and progress toward a degree. So I'll stop there. These are all duplicated headcounts, meaning that a student who's taking a class at Honolulu Community College and Windward Community College is counted twice, once in each total. When we do a full enrollment update with a very deep dive in November, that's after we freeze the data for the semester, reported to the federal government, and we'll give you different slices and dices of that, including looking at unduplicated headcounts, how much of this is early college, what are we doing in non-credit? Everything I've shared with you is the credit enrollment so far. Non-credit doesn't follow the same standard semester schedule. Next, let me update you on extramural funding. This is our first meeting of the year, so I get to share the good news about last year. We had a 2% increase over what was our record. So last year was the best year in our history. The prior year was the best year in our history, and last year surpassed it and is our new best year in history. That's just under $516 million in extramural funding, beating out last year's $505 million. This year, we're only 20 days in. We're running about flat at about 18.5 million, almost same as last year. Next, let me update you on philanthropy. Also, I can give you the update for last fiscal year. The total gifts received for last fiscal year was about $103.5 million. So that's about 8.5 million over our goal, which was 95 million. And that includes about 1.8 million that came in from just under 1,000 UH faculty and staff. I'll say that this is a decline from last year, but last year's record was best in our history. We had the extraordinary 2 gifts from Priscilla and Mark Zuckerberg. That was $60 million. So if you take out that $60 million, this is a very good year also. And I just want to put this in perspective, especially for newer regents. The extramural money funding and the philanthropic funding do not run the university. They don't pay our utility costs. They don't clean our classrooms. They don't pay faculty to teach our basic courses. But, in total, these 2 numbers I just described, that's about $620 million last year that come from people other than taxpayers, sponsors, government agencies, donors that represent an investment in the important work we do for our students and our research for Hawaii. And we're really grateful for those 620 million votes of confidence in the work of the university you steward. We're also getting ready to kick off our campaign. That will take place later this year, and Vice President Dolan briefed you on that. This seemed like a pipe dream to me 8 or 9 years ago, but we will be launching a $1 billion campaign, the first in the history of the University of Hawaii. We are more than halfway there, which is typical for when you launch a major fundraising campaign, and you will be invited to our kickoff event in November. And 2 quick updates from the University of Hawaii Foundation. Rich Wacker, who many of you know, he was off the board for a year, and under their bylaws, he was able to come back, and he was invited back and was elected as chair of the UH Foundation, as he had been before. Also, a face well known to you, Randy Moore has agreed to join the UH Foundation board. So he has started in July, so we're very happy to have his continuing service. The last item I want to mention, and it's a report from the UH Foundation, relates to RISE, our housing project at the Y. As was reported to you, I think we are on schedule. We overcame all of the serious supply chain and permitting hurdles that were making us very nervous a few months ago. Physical opening is July 31st. Students will be moving in for the fall semester. The pro formas that we did on the finances, and again, this does not have university money in play for this, but the pro formas we did started with 50% occupancy, so pretty conservative. Right now, we have 282 leases signed and only 91 beds left. So we have far exceeded that 50% pro forma. It looks like we're at about 75 now, if I did that math in my head. So that's really good, and we'll try to get you there. We thought about doing it today, but the construction is pretty intense right now to be able to open in 11 days. But we'll get you there at a future meeting so you can see what we're doing. Finally, ta-da! This is one of the fun things we get to do at board meetings is recognize people with a handful of awards that are at the university level. So the Board of Regents Willard Wilson Award for Distinguished Service is named in honor of longtime administrator and secretary to the Board of Regents, Willard Wilson. Long before my day, who set a standard for exemplary service to the university during 40 years with UH. And the board chose to name this award for him. And I'm pleased to report that the 2023 recipient of the Willard Wilson Award is Paula Nishimoto, who is the HR specialist for the athletics department here at UH Mānoa. Paula has worked for the department for 34 years. She serves 122 full-time employees, processes more than 300 part-time employees and volunteers each year, facilitates the hiring of coaches and staff for our 20 or so sports programs. And I probably don't have to say this to you, HR in athletics is the most complex and challenging of any part of this university for all kinds of reasons, visible and not visible. And Paula does it all. She manages search committees, provides parts of the reports you see when athletics is reporting to the Board of Regents, advice and expertise for the executive team. She's involved in fact-finding when incidents occur or questions are asked. Her efficiency and effectiveness is recognized both inside and outside the department. And although she has more than a full-time job, she always goes above and beyond to make the department better. One head coach says, she is thoughtful, thorough, and has the highest level of integrity and character. She makes sure everyone is aware of the rules, even when it is not what people want to hear. In addition to her dedication, professional dedication to the department, she's a huge Rainbow fan who bleeds green and spends free time cheering on her favorite UH teams as well. Retired AD Matlin, who is one of her biggest fans, said, Paula is the athletic department's most valuable employee. And this award recognizes her contribution. So congratulations, Paula.